Welcome to How to Homeschool Radio, the show where we help new and veteran homeschoolers create a successful homeschool that works for their families. Whether you're thinking about homeschooling, just started homeschooling, or have been homeschooling for years, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Judy Sardin, homeschooling coach, homeschooling mom of two, and author of Sardin's Practical Guide, How to Start Homeschooling. Are you ready? Let's get to it. This is Judy Sardin, and today we are going to talk about homeschooling the littles. So we're talking birth through through age 5. So a lot of people are asking for suggestions on how to homeschool littles. What do you do with them? Should I get a curriculum for my 3-year-old? And I'm always like, no, please don't. Little kids need lots of experiential stuff, and they can learn so much that way. And so in order to back me up, I've got an awesome mom here today. Her name's Jennifer Howell-Stephens, and she's the mom of 5-year-old twins. And my kids and I visited Miss Jennifer's homestead a couple of weeks ago, and the kids have been asking to go back several times because it's just amazing. She has an amazing setup, and she works with other little kids, and she's got a farm school. And so I just thought that Jennifer would be an awesome person to talk to you about how to educate littles without sitting in front of worksheets and books all the time. So with that, I'm going to ask Miss Jennifer to tell us kind of what is your background? What were you doing before you had those babies?
So I actually have a doctorate in biology, which I got from University of Illinois at Chicago. I basically was in school. I got pregnant with the twins, 5 years after getting my doctorate. Mm-hmm. And I was just basically trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the world, and nothing really ever fit because I really wanted to be a mom, and that hadn't happened yet. So I was just kind of biding my time and using my degree. I did a lot of work in children's museums and things like that. So that's basically what I was doing with my time until the twins came.
And so when you said you always wanted to be a mom, and so you're homeschooling, did you always envision homeschooling them?
No, that never even crossed my mind until, they were here. And probably when they were around 3, I was like, well, I really like having them at home. I really love, doing our day-to-day, all the little things that we did, and started to really think this could be a possibility for me. But my husband was completely against it at that point.
Oh, so tell me about that.
Yeah. So my husband grew up in the inner city of Chicago, and homeschooling sounded like something that people did in the country when there was no school system, Yeah. It did not sound real to him. It didn't sound like something that regular people did.
Right.
And all the homeschool kids that he ever knew about were the weird kids.
Yes.
That had to have a conversation, or that would run and scream if you tried to talk to them, that kind of thing. So actually the homeschool group that we're a part of really helped to change his idea of what homeschooling is and what it can really do for a family.
Mm-hmm. So when you, because I want to delve into that a little bit more, because a lot of people, you have one spouse who really wants to do it and another spouse who doesn't. I mean, that was with us. My husband's older. I mean, today I'm 49. My husband is 62. And so you talk about old school. He definitely was like, what, home, what?
Send them babies to school.
Yes, exactly. So how did you, because you weren't in the group at first, so how did you kind of get your husband to come around to at least, saying, all right, well, we'll try it and see what happens?
So, the first thing I did was I really started to pray about it, because I had this, I had this aversion to sending them to school, and he actually made me send them to a preschool for 6 months. And it was like I had all this free time, right? So he thought that I would be happy, you should have all this time to do all the stuff that you want to do. And I was miserable, just driving them to school and having to hear about what someone else did with them all day. And it got to the point where my little girl, Isabel, she would come home and she was unhappy because we were having some issues with her there. And it didn't help that they were the only two little brown children in the school. So I was unhappy, and it ended up being that one of the twins was unhappy, and it wasn't clicking. And so after that experience, we'd been prayed about it, and I just asked him, I said, can you just give me 6 months? Can you please just let me find someone to help me figure out what I'm doing and give us 6 months, and I will show you what our plan is, what we're going to do each week, and let's just go from there. So he gave me from January to May to kind of figure it out. And at the end of that session, we found Heritage. Mm-hmm. And he also loved what they were learning. Mm-hmm. And I documented all of the things that we were learning, through Instagram and Facebook and all of that. And then he actually started getting a lot of accolades from his family and cousins and other people who were always watching what we do with the twins. Like, that is amazing. I've never seen Black families do this. Y'all are awesome. We love seeing the twins. I can't wait to see what they're doing this week. And so that really started to change his mind about what homeschool was. And then when he met, so our homeschool group that we're a part of is for African-American families. It's called Heritage Homeschoolers. When he saw that other Black families were doing this, and that the Black families were normal, and that, the kids were normal, and that the kids were excelling and just really cool kids, he was amazed. I mean, it really helped to change his heart, and I know the prayer kind of like put all this stuff in motion, but it was a huge sigh of relief for me. And ever since then, he has just kind of been like my biggest cheerleader in all this.
That's awesome. So can you tell, because the babies were 3 when you started doing this?
Yes.
So tell us, you said you documented, and I don't know if you have an Insta. You told me that you have an Insta. Do you have a public Insta that people can look at some of the activities that you do with the children?
Yes. So my, I think it's Sweet Peas and Carrots Homestead. That's the Instagram, and you can go scroll back. And that's actually what I did to kind of prepare for this today. I looked back at all the cute little things that we did, and some of the stuff I even forgot that we did, but it's right there on the internet. So you can go back and look, and their sweet little faces and just all the little things. It brought back a lot of really good memories.
That's great. And I'll make sure that we have the link to your Instagram account so that moms who have littles who are trying to come up with, what do you do? They can look back through there and they can see some of the things that you did. But since this is part of this is going to be just audio, can you tell us some of the things that you did with your 3-year-olds?
Okay. So at 3, I really felt like it was time for them to learn about everything I was already doing. I think at that age, they want to help you with everything. So that's what I let them do. I really love Montessori. And so, Montessori's idea is that help them do what they need to do for themselves. So I got them, we got them the little IKEA stools to where they could pull a stool up and get themselves their own water. They could, start learning how to make their own snacks, wash their hands by themselves. I really tried to make sure that they were equipped with little smaller things that they could handle and that I knew that they could be safe with and start doing a lot of things on their own. So if I was cooking dinner, they were there helping me chop up the vegetables. So they had their own vegetable peelers. They had their own little knives, those silicone knives that, you'd have to try really hard to cut your skin. They would sit there and they would chop up everything with me. I'd give them their potato. I'd have my potato. Of course, if, you have to add a little extra time. But just to see the joy and the accomplishment of them being able to help mommy make dinner, they loved it. they absolutely loved it. And then dinner, you sit down to dinner and they're talking about, Daddy, we helped Mommy make dinner and this is what we did. Let them stir the pot, let them scramble the eggs, let them whip things up. Everything that I did, I basically let them do it with me. So obviously, I do a lot of cooking. We eat a lot of homemade food. So that's a lot of what we did. We did a lot of cooking. I did a lot of kind of Montessori type activities. So having lots of manipulatives where they could actually sit there and do it themselves. I would show them how to do it and then I would watch them do it. And then I would kind of let them go and just watch and observe what they would do. The twins, of course, they like to do everything together. So I always tried to make sure I had two of most things, but I did like to have things that they had to share. Mm-hmm. So learning to share is something that's really important at 3 too. But just letting them have things that they could touch and feel. We also spent a ton of time outside, and we still do now too, but that's when I really was like, okay, they're ready to go, and, get them little shovels and buckets and let them play in the dirt. Let them taste the dirt. Let them, look at the acorns and look at the textures. And, they're just exploring everything. I never really said, no, don't do this unless it was unsafe. I really pushed my boundaries there because I was always been, kind of the worried mom. But once we got outside and I knew that they weren't going to really hurt themselves or that sometimes they needed to learn those natural boundaries, they went to town. And of course, we've always had animals, so letting them explore and learn how to deal with the animals and how to be gentle. It's just really all those little basic things that you do every day that you don't think twice about. They have zero, they're starting from ground zero. And so I would always think, okay, if I'm needing to learn how to do this, what do I need to know first? And that's what I would teach them.
Now, what I really love about everything you just said is that what you just said has nothing to do with the children themselves sitting down reading a book. These are all things that anybody can do, really. And because I know a lot of with the Montessori, and when people think Montessori or Montessori school, they think it's very expensive private school, but there are a lot of Montessori materials. So my children went to Montessori school before I homeschooled them. So I'm a huge fan of Montessori. I believe in it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff that you can do, and you can Google it if you're listening, that you can do that's really low or no cost. We've got rice, and you've got beans, and you've got tweezers, and you've got vegetable basters, and you've got all this stuff at home or that you could get at pretty low cost.
At the dollar store,
Yes. So there are a lot of things that you can do Montessori wise that doesn't require you buying a lot of stuff, but it helps the children learn. And like what Jennifer said, the whole Montessori philosophy is that kids can do a lot more than we give them credit for. If you're still preparing your kid's snack and your kid is in middle school, please stop. And I say this to people all the time. Just stop. If they're in middle school, they are more than capable of preparing their own snack or preparing their own takeaway lunch. So Montessori is all about young children learning this very independence that Jennifer is talking about right now, putting things down low so that they can reach it, having things that they can manipulate with their small hands, but then just letting them go. And so I really love that. Jennifer, let's talk about some of the outdoor stuff too, because again, culturally, we don't spend a whole lot of time outside. I mean, our hair might get messed up, but with us wearing natural hair now, it's not that big of a deal, but it still might be for some people, because that's one of the things that I really had to push myself with too. It didn't come natural just being outside and exploring and traipsing through the mud, because I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, you didn't get dirty. Do not go. I mean, we were outside all day, but you better not come inside caked with mud, right?
Yep. So I grew up, I grew up taking piano lessons and viola lessons and French horn lessons. So I literally was not allowed to play. Like if we were going to the garden, that's different. But I wasn't allowed to just go out and play and climb trees and jump off of rocks and things like that, because my mother would say, if you break a finger, if you break an arm, then all of our, we wasted our money on all these expensive lessons. So I knew that I didn't want that for them. We go outside and they just go to town. My only rule is that if you can't hear me, you're too far away. I need to at least be able to, see you or hear you. Mm-hmm. Other than that, you're free to just go to town. And so just being outside, I feel like I want them to be comfortable in whatever kind of weather. Mm-hmm. Because some kids, so I run a forest school here on our land, and we go to other natural areas, but some of the kids have never played in the rain. And just the thought of that, the joy of playing in the rain. Now, I remember the first time I let the twins play in the rain, I took all of their clothes off. And I just let them go out there, and they ran and they screamed and they had so much fun, and the laughter. I wish I had videotaped it just to hear the laughter and the joy in their little voices. And when they got done, I brought them in, gave them a hot shower, gave them some hot tea. It's something, you got to do it. It's these things that you have to do. They have to play in the mud. Let them get dirty. Okay, I understand there's play clothes, and that's the other thing. You have to explain to them, these are your play clothes. These are clothes that are not okay to go outside and get dirty. And once you explain that, you give them some rain boots, you give them some, stuff from the dollar store, and let them go to town in the mud, feed the dog mud, whatever it is, climb in the trees, picking flowers. It's these things that if they don't do it, they will lose this complete connection to nature, because if you don't give it to them, they're not going to ever have that need for it. And at some point in life, you have to be out in nature. You're missing something. You see some of these kids now that don't have this connection to nature. Yep. And there's always something weird or missing about their personalities. And I just feel like you get this bigger understanding for life by just being outside and being able to play. And when they're playing, they're learning, yes. And it doesn't have to be something that we're setting up an experiment or anything. I built the twins a water table, sand table it stays outside. It's in the garden. And till this day, that's one of the first things they go out there and do. And they have little buckets and stuff, and they're collecting acorns and rocks and whatever else and flowers. They're cooking. We might have just watched a cooking show, and next thing I know, I hear the same language going on over there. Oh, this is overbaked, and your flowers are not, they're not the right form. And so it's like they extrapolate what they're learning inside when they go outside, and it's just an extension of their learning environment. So I let them go, and sometimes I might be cooking, dinner and looking out the kitchen window, and they're out there riding their bikes. They could stay out there for hours by themselves, just enjoying whatever it is outside. So,
and what the other thing, the thing that you just said is, it's not like you're setting up an experiment, because I think a lot of times because we're so used to scheduling everything for kids, we're used to, ordering all their activities. Everything is so structured. What I love about what you're talking about is how unstructured it is. Mm-hmm. And the kids don't get bored. They don't. When kids are outside playing, they don't come inside and say, I'm bored, right? Nope. When my kids get bored inside, I send them outside, Mm-hmm. And so, that's what my mom did, right? Go outside, find something to do. But
they do. They find it.
Yes. And so that's one of the other things. It's unstructured. And so when you're sitting here trying to think about, just trying to wrap your head around, what am I going to do with a 3-year-old? Mm-hmm. All this learning that you're talking about is taking place. And I've got another podcast episode posted. Actually, just posted it this week, where I'm speaking with a neurodevelopmentalist, and she's talking about just a lot of the things that we see in kids today are in large part due to how the culture has changed. And so babies are not being put on the floor, so they're missing that tactile information that they're missing it. So they're always in a device, in a bouncy seat, in a saucer. And so babies of old were on the floor. They felt the cold hardwoods, and then they felt the fluffy carpet, and all of those things built those neural pathways.
Yeah.
And that's missing now a lot. And so what you're talking about is building those neural pathways like crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're touching, they're feeling, they're exploring. That's what kids used to do in the old days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, when the twins were first here, I remember finding Montessori then. And one of the first things I did was set up a tummy time area for them with a mirror on the floor. And they would sit there and look at themselves and look at each other. And I'd made them these quilts, and they would feel the quilt, and I had a sheepskin rug there for them to feel. And they would just sit there and just, love on the quilt and just look at themselves. And like you said, they would crawl to the hallway, the hardwood floors. I mean, they would be happy down there for a long time until it was time to nurse, right? They were fine until they got hungry. So yes, all of that is so important. And even when outside playing in that mud, you feel the silt and the sand and the clay, and just getting their fingers deep in it. And there have been times where I had literally we had to spray them down before we could bring them inside. But I know that did something for them that I could never set something up to do that. So, yeah, they have to have experiences.
So, okay, so you started doing that when they were 3. So, as they turned 4, did you what did you do differently as they turned 4? Or as they got older?
I think the biggest thing was I actually asked one of the moms who had older kids if she could point me in the right direction. What are the things that they need to know for kindergarten? And so I, looked, okay, we need to know our letters, which we had already because I would also read to them all the time, but I started reading to them before they could even hold their heads up. So I knew that that vocabulary was building inside of their heads. And we just started working on all of those things, but I never used worksheets or anything like that. I would just find something that I felt like was hands-on that they could do to start working on those skills. So we had a lot of the Montessori red and blue letters, which we still use a lot of because they're only 5. But, I would lay those out on the table and I would do a game because we've got twins, it can always be a game. So who can point to the letter first? This letter says "ah," this letter says "but," and that kind of thing, and see who could point to it first. And just kind of ticking off the list, all of those things that they need to know, which if you look at it, most people's children, if you've been doing all these things with them, they probably could start kindergarten at 4 or even sooner, because you're like, they already know all of this, the colors. We would go outside and I would say, hey, point to something, find something that's yellow, or in the classroom, bring me some yellow blocks, bring me some green blocks. It was never like, let's sit down and let's learn this and go through flashcards. I just felt like if they were moving and laughing and having fun, and as long as I was, fulfilling what I felt like they needed, then we were good.
I like the movement part. That was, part of the reason why I started homeschooling my son when he started kindergarten, is because I could see where we were going if I'd put him in school where he wouldn't be allowed to move. And with my son, he learned better if he was moving. And in fact, even now, if I'm doing a read aloud or something like that, to be doing something with his hands, he usually plays with his Legos or something.
Okay.
While I'm reading aloud, and he's 12. And so back then, we're doing math facts. We'd bounce a ball while he was learning his math facts. I even have a picture where he's literally, his bottom is on the sofa, but his legs are in the air. and his elbow and his head are down on the floor, and he's working on his math. So it's just, I say, I don't care if you're standing on your head to do your work.
As long as we get it done.
Yes, as long as we can get it done. And so I really like the that you mentioned the movement, because back to the neurodevelopmentalist, to be able to take in the audio, different people take it different. It absorbs differently.
Yes. That's very, very true. Yes, even because when we do read alouds, I allow them to do something like Legos, or sometimes we might have a little sewing project that they're working on, or weaving, or whatever it is, whatever our handicraft is at the moment, they can do that. Sometimes they might just be laying on the floor and petting the dog, or even playing with the dog, as long as I know that you're paying attention. And the way that I tell is that I have them narrate to me back whatever it was we just read. Because if you can tell me what was just happened in the story, okay, I know you got it,
Yes. And that I do the same thing. They laugh in the right places, and they all now want to interject all kinds of stuff. It takes forever to get through a chapter now. Because it ends up being a discussion. But yes, like you said, I know, and I know some people will say, their impression is that if they're reading aloud to their kid has to be sitting there still staring at them.
No, that's hard to do. I mean, that's hard for me to do it as an adult. Like, I feel like I had to train myself to do that. But even then, think about all the adults that are constantly on their phone as they're listening to something. So you expect somebody who's 4, who should be moving, to do that? Yeah. That's rough.
Yes, I agree. So I'm glad that you mentioned that you've incorporated movement in their learning. Because I personally think that's very important. And even today, I found that it's funny. Recently, my daughter has needed more movement than she has in the past. She's in the past been one who gets sit still and do stuff. But now she's starting to get kind of antsy. And so I will just say, Haley, why don't you get up and go hit some tennis balls against the wall in the basement? And one day she comes up and she's like, you know what? I never thought about that, but that was really helpful.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't have to sit here. You don't have to. I know you've typically done that, but your brother has never done that. So
yeah.
if you need to get up and walk out some of your antsiness, that's okay. It's okay. The beauty of homeschooling.
Right. And just trying to understand what could be going on in their little brains, whatever developmental stage is going on. I just have always tried to be understanding of that. Because even, I don't know if you remember the app, it would tell you when a brain leap was coming for your child. So, but I think it stops at 18 months. But, when they would have a brain leap, it would get crazy, and they would just cry or be really agitated for no reason. And I'd be like, what is going on? Well, this app would tell you, hey, your child has a brain leap coming. And so just having that little, thing to tell me if your child is being sensitive or seeming not quite like themselves or needing some sort of different stimuli, it's okay. They're just going through this stage. And after they're done with this, they'll probably be able to do all these other things that they weren't able to do before. And so those brain leaps are still happening well past the app. It happens. Shoot, I feel like I go through some stages still. So just to kind of remind myself that, hey, these guys are changing every day. Literally, sometimes I look at them, it's like, did you grow an inch this week? What is going on? So they're constantly growing. Their brains are constantly developing. And so, they may not need the same thing day to day.
That's a really great point. And I never heard of this Brain Leaps app, but I did, and I still do try to, typically, when your babies are little, you're always looking at the stages, what they should be doing at this stage and what they should be doing at this stage. And I think we kind of get out of it as our kids get older. But I do try to continue to look at those because even though my son is 12 now, and let me just tell you what, enjoy those 5-year-old babies while you got them, because he's extra now, but I try to, and you've seen him, he plays like he's 8, but he's still hitting some of the 12-year-old cognitive milestones now. And I know, I have to remind myself he needs more autonomy now.
Yeah.
And he needs more socializing now. And he needs these things, which can sometimes just manifest because he's 12 and maybe still can't really articulate what it is he needs. I get frustrated, but then I have to remember, okay, this is the stage he's in.
Yeah.
And I can give it helps me. I might not be more patient, but it helps me to at least understand where he's coming from. He's not just being this way just to torment his mother.
Yes.
So, okay. So once they were 4, you started kind of incorporating some letters, but you did it more organically. You didn't sit down with the flashcards. And so now they're, so when did you start? Did you just start the forest school this year when they turned 5?
So we started forest school last winter, actually. So they would have been 4.5 then.
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So we, there is another one here in close area. I think it's in Ackworth, but there were 2 issues. One was it was the same day that Isabel has ballet. And the lady who ran it said that we basically had to be there on time until the very end. You're not allowed to leave early. And so I was like, I don't want to change, Isabel's ballet day because she has friends in this class now. And this was her first time doing ballet and her first time doing a class without her brother, just anything without her brother. And so I was unwilling to change that. And then we would have also been the only African-American family in the group. So between those 2 things, I said, you know what? I am going to have to just do this on my own.
I love it. I also did have an episode with Amber Johnston, another mom friend of ours, actually, who did the same thing. Couldn't find what she needed.
It was huge. So
yes, couldn't find what she needed. So she started her own. So tell me about forest school.
So forest school is basically a time for the kids to be out in nature, but to also just kind of be out there learning and playing in nature, which, most kids don't get access to do that. But this is what you do for a whole afternoon. But then we have a time where we're actually learning some science. So it's all nature-based science. We learned about the trees and, of course, apples and pumpkins. We're getting ready to do a mushroom unit. So they are getting what I would consider an actual, a science class. Because we do hands-on experiments. We just learned about building fires. So that's something that we're also going to be building outdoor skills. So we want them to learn how to tie knots, all these things that unless you're in the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, that kind of thing, you may not ever learn it. Just from being at home, you may not ever learn it. I'm sorry. I don't even know. I'm in my husband's office. I don't know how to make it stop. Okay. So that's our goal, to have them be out there, but then to have other children that look like them and they don't have to be a certain way. They can be as loud as they want. As long as you're being nice and kind to one another, they learn to take care of one another. They learn how to work in groups, which, is one of the things that some people will say, oh, well, if they're homeschooled, then they never get to be around other kids. That's not true, because we do sports. We have forest school where they really have to learn how to work together. Sometimes we give them a challenge for the day. And they have to work together, in groups to figure it out. And it helps with that logic and problem solving skills. And But you'd be surprised. It's not just for the kids, because these kids are not dropped off. They have to have an adult with them. And a lot of the moms are learning right along with us, like some of the stuff they've never been exposed to. And then the moms also get this whole, we're like a family,
Sure.
So moms are able to come together and, girl, let me tell you what happened this week, or have you ever, had to deal with this? So you have a camaraderie amongst the moms. But we also do, we share in the teaching. So I'm not the only one teaching. So your child actually gets to learn from the other moms. We have a schedule. And generally, if we're learning about, we're starting a new unit, I teach the beginning of the unit, because I kind of want to give all the moms an idea of what this, unit should be about, that kind of thing. And then I help the moms plan out what they're going to teach. And then we have like a big project for that unit. So the kids are getting some amazing exposure to things that most kids won't ever get to do. Like, we're going to grow our own mushrooms in our mushroom unit, and the kids will get to taste, saute some mushrooms, taste mushrooms. But it's just a really cohesive group. And the deal is that when you come to forest school, you have to make this commitment to come every month. And so that the kids are seeing these same kids all the time.
Right.
And they really learn the different personalities, learn how to work together. So the children love it. I know every single one of the kids, like, they are like, is it forest school day yet? And I'm like, no, it's, forest school's on Wednesday, guys. So, but I can tell that everyone is excited, and all the moms have told me they have been talking about this all week. They cannot wait to come back. So it's not ever something that I thought I would do, but now that I'm in it, like, I know I had to do it, because there's so many kids that would never get this exposure if it wasn't for my little tiny forest school.
No, I think that's awesome. And when my kids and I see your Facebook posts and your Instagram stuff, they're like, "Oh, Mommy, can we go?" And I say, "Can you look at those kids? Those kids are like half your age." No, it's for little kids. But they love it. They love looking at. Now, you also do classes that you for moms. And I know you've had a mushroom growing class, and you had your bone broth class, and you have had your fire cider class where you for immunity building. Now, do you have a Facebook page that people can go to? Because I know that was an event on Facebook.
Yes, I do. I have a Facebook page that I mostly send my Instagram posts to the Facebook posts. But yes, I can send that to you too. And it's actually the Little Learning Farm. So we have an LLC, the Little Learning Farm, but we're working on creating a 501c3, which is Sweet Peas and Carrots Family Homestead. So, yes, I can send that to you too.
Okay, so the Little Learning Farm is a Facebook page, and so when you have these classes, which would be for moms,
yes,
it's kind of like a for homesteading sort of thing. You have them there, and so that would be a great place to go, Mom, if you're interested in doing anything, and also to get ideas. You either go to Instagram or Facebook. For ideas to do with little. So okay, they're in kindergarten now, and so are you doing any pen and paper work?
So we are. So we've gone from like all Montessori, mostly Montessori, to a mixture between Montessori and Charlotte Mason homeschooling. So we still do a lot of reading and discussing what we've learned. We are working on, handwriting. So that's important. We actually use, handwriting without tears. We use that. And so that does incorporate a workbook, but I love that it has these wooden pieces where they get to build the letters. And then we use the chalkboards where they write their letters on the chalkboard, and then they do their workbook. So they actually really enjoy that because they get to use the chalk and
yes,
wiping it off the chalkboard. We use Right Start Math, which is it's like it's a really hands-on math, so it has an abacus that goes along with it, and so you're doing a lot of visual things in games and songs to learn your math. Every now and then it'll have a worksheet, but usually it's like a cut and paste kind of thing, and seeing what the tens triangle looks like, that kind of thing. So we're not just like, we don't do a whole lot of worksheets and workbooks, but we do a lot of reading. We have our Bible time and time where we kind of discuss what our beliefs are and why we believe the way we believe, because I think that's important. I kind of grew up not ever being explained from my parents. You know, they never explained to me why we do what we do. And I feel like that's a huge gap that I had growing up. So, we do that, and then we read poetry. They learn to recite their own poems. So each month I pick a poem for them to learn. And sometimes it might go 2 months, but that's kind of like our memory work. And you'd be amazed at how quickly they can pick up these pretty long poems. And I love that they're both listening to each other's poems, so they really are learning too at the same time. We do, have you ever heard of Squilt?
Nope.
Squilt music. It's called Squilt. It's super quiet, uninterrupted listening time. So basically it's a music appreciation class where we learn about the dynamics of music, and you go through, you know, the Baroque period, classical music, all these different kinds of music, jazz, but you learn how to listen to the music and how to kind of break it down and understand what you're actually listening to. To be able to train your ear musically is something I feel like you don't get unless your child is physically playing an instrument, or even a lot of times in, you know, like in a symphony where they get to hear all the different kinds of instruments. So I feel like that's really important. And then we do like our own music time. So they're learning how to play the chime bells and the bells, and there's just, I feel like there's a lot. It sounds really scatterbrained, but I have so many things that we do, and we do certain things or certain activities on each day, but it's the same each week. So they are really enjoying that.
Okay, so a couple of things. One, you didn't tell me what you're doing for reading. Are you teaching them to read? Or are you? I know that you're doing a lot of read aloud. So how are you teaching them to read?
So we are actually using, I think it's called the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading. And it has been really good because they're not, I feel like it's not, how do you say, it doesn't put a lot of stress on them. I had a very hard time learning to read, and I did not learn how to read phonetically. And so I wanted to make sure that they knew every single letter sound and that was down pat before they started doing those kinds of things. And I was worried because in my head, I was like, I want them to be reading fluently by the time they're 5 and, you know, all these things. And we just started the program, and I was like, let's just go through it. And they're sounding out words and stuff without me showing, you know, I'd showed them a little bit how to blend, but it's just like, it just happens. You teach them the basics, and now it's just happening for them. We'd started with Hooked on Phonics, but I felt like it was handicapping them the way it teaches the words, because it teaches you to look at the end of the words, the last 2 letters. And then you have to go back and look at the first letter. And I felt like every word they looked at, they were looking at the last 2 letters.
Oh, gosh.
And then trying to add the first, and it was frustrating them. So I was just like, okay. And they read a lot, you know, the little books, the Hooked on Phonics books with that. And I think that was the level 3 we started at. So I said, okay, let me, you know, ask Amber. And she said that's what she used. And then I said, I have that book. I'd had that book since they were 2.
Yeah.
And just hadn't like done anything with it. So I went back and I said, okay, let's start with that. And we started with that when they were probably 4.5. And so once you get past all the letter sounds, it goes much quicker. And, you know, they're going to be reading paragraphs and things soon. So they're doing really well with their reading. And I went more structured with that because I had such a hard time reading, and I just didn't ever want them to have to go through that. I was one of those kids that, like, I had to have straight A's or I was, in the corner somewhere crying.
Yes.
And when I realized that I wasn't in the gifted reading class, it like tore my heart down. And so I literally taught myself to memorize a bunch of words in order to read. Yeah. And I just never wanted them to go through that, because I remember like just being devastated, feeling like I wasn't smart enough. And, I don't think they'll have that problem at all, because learning to read phonetically means you could break down any word, no matter what comes to you. Whereas if you were, just memorizing words, that's why I don't really like when parents start teaching the kids those sight words before they know the letter sounds and stuff, because then they're really just memorizing that. They don't know how to read. And I had to get over the fact of wanting them to read fluently by the time they were 5 and just be like, okay, we're going to go through this process. We're going to stick with it, because Miss Amber, she did tell me that once they got through the program, her children read at much higher grade levels than, the grade level they're at. And so that's what I wanted to go for, rather than pushing them to memorize a bunch of words, that they, that it just wasn't going to be, it's not real. It's like a facade,
Yes.
When your baby can read, they're just looking at the form of the word. They're not learning how to read. So.
Yes, I agree. And, I had a child who was he read early when he was Montessori, but then he regressed. And that whole, I was reading on a 12th grade level by the time I was, 4th grade.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard for me. I had expectations for my children, and it was really hard. That's one of the things that I talk about in one of my prior podcasts, about how when people think they don't have the patience to homeschool, a lot of it is reorganizing your expectations. And so if I wanted him to be a fluent, perfect reader by 5 or 6, I would have ended up sending him back to school, because he wasn't.
Parents do, because they're just like, I can't do it, but you can.
Yes. So one last question. You talked about your schedule, because that's one of the things that people are always asking me about. In fact, several people have asked me recently, do I do the same thing every day? For me, I have found with my older kids, and actually I got this, I used to be really insecure about homeschooling. I was that way for a long time, even though I kept doing it. And I would, every year, it's fall, I would, all the big private schools in town, like the Westminster and the Lovetts and all those, they would have their, these are like the $25,000 a year private schools for your 6-year-old. And they would be having their open houses. And so I would go and, see what they were doing, so I can make sure that, that I was doing what they're doing. And one of the things that I took away, but this is what they were all doing, they had block schedules. And so over, say, an 8-day period, they'd make sure they got math in 5 times, reading in 5 times, but maybe science only 2 or 3 times. And so they kind of use that block schedule. And so I was trying to do everything every day, and it was never getting done. I was always frustrated. And so now that I've kind of gone to this block schedule, so no, we don't do the same thing every day. And so you mentioned that you do the same thing every, like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but they're different each day. So tell us how you've organized your schedule, how you found it works for you.
So there are a couple of things that we do every day. We always do our Bible time. So it's either Bible or devotional, and we kind of go back and forth. And we always do habit training. So, these little things that you might see some child acting a fool in the store, and you're like, ooh, his mama didn't do this, or his mom didn't teach him that. That's what I try to teach my little ones. So right now we're working on obedience, but there's all these things, obedience, cleanliness, I try to spend at least 10 minutes working on that. And it might be, it always includes like a Bible scripture and the definition of what they're learning. And then, maybe an activity or a book to go along with it. So we do that every day. And then we also,
You're back.
Okay. Then we also do our reading every day, and we do our math every day and writing. So, and that sounds like a lot, but we're only spending about 10 minutes in each of those areas to get it done. But then Mondays, we work on manners, and we have art appreciation on that day. I don't have my cards in front of me, so I'm going off of my memory, but we have art appreciation on that day. And we also read, there's a book called The Hive of Busy Bees. I don't know if you've ever heard of that,
No.
But it's like a book of, it's about a little boy and a little girl who go to their grandma and grandpa's at the farm for summer. But the grandma every night has this story to tell them, and each story has like a lesson that they learn in it. So on Tuesdays, we actually have like an art project that we're actually working on. And we have these good citizen cards that we go over once a week, and then we try to incorporate that in the rest of our week. Wednesdays are our forest school. Mm-hmm. So forest school goes from 10 to 2. And then if we are feeling good enough, like not tired and too tired, we'll have poetry tea time. So that's when we do our squilt music learning. We work on poem recitation. We work on, I read them several poems that, I've been enjoying. And then we, have tea and a little treat on that day. Thursdays, we work on Spanish vocabulary and trying to have, conversations in Spanish. And then on our Fridays, what do we do on Fridays? We continue with our actual art project. So sometimes it might show up twice a day. And then on Fridays, we also do our science. So I consider forest school science, and actually science has been popping up more because we've been learning about space. So I just kind of read as our read aloud for that part of the day. We'll read a book about space, or astronauts or whatever it is. So I'll use that little time to do whatever little elective they're wanting to learn about. So right now it's space. But we get through class in under 2 hours. I mean, and there's breaks in there. I give them what's called brain breaks. So we might exercise, we might do some jumping jacks or run around or do a little yoga or something, but it allows them to have time to kind of just get their wiggles out and have fun. And we do class wherever we want to. So we do have a classroom, but if someone's not feeling great, we might do classroom in my bed that day, or we might bring all the bean bags to the classroom and do them on bean bags. Or sometimes we'll go outside. If it's a beautiful day, we'll take a nature walk and then, do our class outside in the garden. So I like to give them those options, because if you don't want to be inside, if you don't want to be in the classroom, they're just not going to, they're going to act out, and they're not going to, they're not going to get through their lessons, and I'm going to be upset. They're going to be upset. So I'd rather just give them the option from the get-go and say, let's get our work done. Let's have a great day. Where do you want to do class? So that's what we do.
And I know that you didn't really mention it, but I know that you get out and you do field trips. And so, because you just came back from one today.
Yes. So a lot of times our homeschool group has, classes that are being given. So today we learned about John Henry from Miss Amber from Heritage. And we went to the West Cobb, library, and that was basically all morning. So I don't try to come home and do like a full lesson with them. If anything, before we go, I try to do our Bible time, because I feel like that's like the most important thing of our day. Spending some time with the Lord, and then we go on. I know some moms try to come home and then do lesson. I'm not going to do that to myself. I used to try to do that, And I used to be like, well, we're supposed to be on this lesson and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, like, this is not public school. We do not have to be on a schedule. And we actually do more school year round than the kids that are going to, a school system are doing. So I try not to stress myself on that. And of course, there's times where I, feel guilty, but we take breaks. We have sometimes a week where I'm just like, look, I need to catch up on some housework. Y'all help me. But during those times, we'll be listening like to an audiobook or something. We'll pick an audiobook to listen to. And then we'll play games, some educational games. But I just feel like if you're having fun, they are learning all the time.
Yep.
All the time. Even when you think they're not paying attention. Because I promise you, there have been times where I didn't think they got anything out of the class. And Daddy comes home and they just like regurgitate something that I taught them earlier that I didn't think they were paying attention to. So they're definitely getting it.
I think, and that's an excellent point, that you can have your schedule, but don't be a slave to it. Don't let yourself get stressed out. Just, you're homeschooling and it's not public school. And even if you're in a state where, you do have set requirements, because Georgia is one of the more, I don't want to say lax, but I am going to say it, lax states with regard to with requirements and things like that. But even in states where you have to show that, you did so many hours of history, science, so much of the stuff that you're talking about can be incorporated in that. You can do so much that doesn't necessarily have to be sitting in front of a worksheet and filling it out. And if you've got other stuff to do, I'm like you. I used to try to get it all done. If I had this on the schedule for today, even if we did a field trip, I'd still try to get it done. Like you said, I quit doing that to myself.
Yeah, because it's like they're not stressed about it. Why are you so stressed out about it?
That's exactly right. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Do you have, just for are you planning on doing anything different when they turn 6 for next year? I know it's kind of far away, but just if you're planning on doing anything different for next year, let me know. And then if not, then just give us kind of your parting shots for homeschooling littles.
Okay. For turning 6, I'm hoping that we'll be able to be sitting and reading some books by ourselves. So we do kind of have a quiet time that doesn't happen every day because they're not taking naps or anything anymore. I do want to incorporate that back into our schedule so that it is a daily thing and they have to sit and just read something that of course they love or that they're really interested in, but I would want to have some daily reading on their own incorporated. But everything else, I think I'm going to kind of keep it the same. We might take a few art classes outside of the house, which I think is important because I'm not an artist and I can't necessarily teach them everything they need to know, but I don't foresee too much else changing, but you never know. So, but as far as homeschooling, if you're thinking about it, give it a try. Even if you just give yourself 6 months or a year, give your family a try because mine, they'll even tell me, I liked preschool, but I love being at home so much more with you, Mom. And of course, that just makes my whole heart just fill up. But, it's hard. Find yourself, it can feel hard, but it doesn't have to be hard. Find yourself a support group of other moms or a group where you can ask questions to someone who can kind of get you started and help you figure out what kind of homeschooling you want to do, because homeschooling is very broad. There are so many things that you can do, so many different ways to homeschool. There are podcasts out there to kind of help you figure that out. So I would say give yourself some time to figure out how you want to homeschool or how you think you want to, and just do it, because you could procrastinate on this forever. They're not in school forever, so you could miss your chance. But I really think that the time that we get to spend together as a family is invaluable. invaluable. I saw a commercial the other day where it said that an average family only spends 37 minutes together in a day. And that broke my heart to see that number, because I'm with my family all day long. My husband works from home most of the time. So we get to fully mold these children and help to push and guide them and give them these beautiful ideas all day long. So if you want to have a bigger influence on the ideas and things that your child is getting to learn about, this is the way to do it.
Thank you. And if you are looking to homeschool, I do homeschool coaching. So you can reach out. You can reach out to me at judysarden.com/homeschool. And you can see all the stuff that I have available, lots of free resources. And also I do coaching there. So you can contact me through the website. Well, thank you so much again, Jennifer, and have a great weekend.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Hey, one more thing before you go. As a valued member of How to Homeschool Radio, I want to help you and hear from you not only when you're listening to the show, but all day, every day. I have a new Facebook group called How to Homeschool, and it's a place where you can get together with other homeschooling families to get support, offer support, and interact real-time to homeschooling issues that are most important to you. If you want to be a part of this growing community, see the latest videos, and get live answers to your homeschooling questions, go to judysarden.com/homeschool podcast. Or you can just hop onto Facebook and search for How to Homeschool under groups. Drop me a note to let me know when you join. I can't wait to see you there.